Hello, everybody. This is Gary. What I decided to do this evening is that I'm going through and reprocessing a bunch of photos, and this is one I wanted to give another whack at. This one's about 5 years old, and it was taken in 2011, and we had some forest fires that year. That July we had first part of August we had a forest fire on the front side or the north side of Mount Hood. So this is from that day. Anyway, so I thought I'd do a quick Lightroom movie for you guys. So, pardon me, I'm not used to making movies, and so I may get stage fright, and I may stutter, and I may stumble. But what I want to do is make this uh, as quick and easy as possible. Show you just how easy this is. It's simple. Started out with a nice photo with a nice histogram. You can tell that the highlights aren't clipped on the right side, and the blacks aren't clipped on the left side. We got a pretty decent histogram there. And any of the spikes in between the left wall and the right wall really don't bother us, okay? What I always do is I come down here very first thing and I come into my lens correction module. And I come down and I will usually come over here and click enable profile corrections. If the lens data was put into the EXIF file, then that should, or the raw file, you should be able to click on that and have it affected somehow. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, unclick it. And I always click on remove chromatic aberration too. I seem to do that all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to close this module and I'm going to go up here to my basic module. So I always start up here at the top and work my way down. I start with the basic module and basically work my way down when I'm doing my adjustments. Okay, and you get your tool palette here, and this has got all your tools. And then these are all your adjustment modules down here. This one here is for cropping or adjusting. This one here is for removing spots and stuff. That's really good for dust bunnies if you got dust bunnies in your sky. Red eye correction, but I haven't seen red eye in any pictures in a long time. Here's your gradient tool. This is like a grad filter. For some reason you wanted to put a grad filter in, you can do that. Because I don't use grad filters on my camera. As long as you got a good histogram, you can always do it here if you wanted to. So in lieu of a grad filter, you can always go down here and grab the adjustment radio filter. And what that does is it puts a big round filter in your photo. I hardly ever use that. I sometimes use the grad filter. I may use it on this one because I don't have a whole lot sticking up in this guy other than these branches on the left side. If there for some reason were different things in the sky and I brought the grad filter over the top of it, it would darken those things as well. And sometimes that bothers me. Anyway, go back here to the adjustment brush. This one here is one I use quite a bit. I can affect localized area, localized adjustment in the different places of the photograph. I can even emulate like light bleed in or maybe increase the effect on a light in one side to the other by maybe putting a little bit of an adjustment in the area. Or, maybe a partial vignette in the shot. I probably will do that before I'm finished here. So, all right, let me go back to what I was doing. I start at the top. I will come through here, and I will usually, whoops, let me click off on this. I'll usually come through to the top, and I will check my white balance. Usually click auto, see how that looks. Daylight, that's too blue. It was kind of a cloudy day, maybe even shade. The shade kind of gives me the warmth that I want. I really don't want a dark, dark blue, too blue. There's a lot of blue in it anyhow. So you can go through here and use these presets. They're just like the ones in your photo or in your camera. If you go through there and you just hit some of these and affect that, it usually gets you pretty much in the ballpark. If you wanted for some reason to fine tune it, you can always take your temperature slider back and forth. I rarely touch my tint slider. Sometimes I'll move my temperature slider back and forth. Okay, then I'll come back down here. And right now my exposure looks pretty good. I mean, even the histogram tells me that it is. So I'm going to leave it the way it is right now. This contrast is the same. And I'll do a little bit of fine tuning with of the exposure and the contrast down here in these four little modules down here. So in this case, I think if I pull the highlights down, I'll be able to pull some definition in of the mountain there. And I did. And it's still misty. Looks kind of cool misty. And then I might even pull my shadow slider up to bring in some of the dark details and the darks and stuff in there. A lot of times I'll have some extremes here, not in this particular case, but sometimes it goes from extreme to extreme, okay? So I'll pull a little bit up there, and that's all I'm trying to do effectively is deal with maybe some of this foreground, because I'm going to do something down here to see. I've got some soft focus here. I got focus there. I got real bad focus problem here. Like I said, this is 5 years ago, and I was doing things different back then. And what caused this is that I wasn't considering the placement of the focal plane or the hyperfocal distance formula like I know it now. In this particular case, I focus past these bushes down here. So in this particular case, what I would do is manually focus past those bushes and then bring it just barely so the bushes come back into focus. Then you know that the beginning of your focus is just before that, and everything past that is going to fall into focus the best you can. In this particular case, I had a f6.7, and I'm not sure why. I would have stopped down and increased my depth of focus if I would have done this yesterday or today. So anyway, this one's got some flaws, but what we're going to do is we're going to try to deal with it. Okay, and this probably won't be one that I'm going to be printing anyhow. So pardon that. I apologize. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here with my adjustment brush, and I'm going to make it fairly large. And I'm going to come through and I'm going to kind of paint in this area down here. This will do two things. This will help me get a vignette down here in the bottom. I'll bring my exposure down. All right, because this area is kind of down in the shadows anyhow. So I kind of want to pull this down, make this kind of a half vignette, I guess. Because I don't want a vignette up here in the sky. A lot of times people will make a vignette and they'll do the whole vignette. They'll vignette everything. And really then it makes dark corners in the sky that I don't really care for. So what I've done just now is I've made this corner darker. This corner now, or this bottom of the photo, will kind of embrace the rest of it. It'll support the rest of the scene with a darker cradle down here, you might say. I don't know how to put it. Anyhow, if I wanted to, I can come in here and even make this corner down here a little bit darker, because that bush is starting to bug me. There. See how I've done two adjustments in that one area down here. All right. All right. Okay. Kind of like that. You can see that you can go back into your history area down here, and you can click back here and see what you've done. All right. See, we brought it up, and then we added the brush stroke, and then we brought down that corner. Okay. All right, and now we haven't affected anything up here, but we've kind of made this darker, and we're kind of going from the darkness out into the light, brightness down here, the light. So we're using the dark and light to be able to pull the viewer into the photograph. Okay, all right. So now I've kind of coming through here, and I'm adjusting everything here. I might maybe bring the brights up, but you notice as I'm kind of looking at the foreground more than the sky, and the more I balance this foreground and this midground out the way I want it, the more the sky becomes brighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to bring a grad filter down over the top of that. I'm not going to bring it down too very far. All right. And if you want to know where it's affecting it, you can put your cursor over the top of the button there, and you notice how it turns red. It shows you where it's going to affect it. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to kind of bring this down just a little bit. And if for some reason you want to affect this, you can move it around and move it up and down, or you can make it bigger, smaller, and then move it down. So anyhow, there you go. You've been able to affect the sky now without it affecting what the adjustments were down in the foreground, and you can hit done. All right, now I'm not going to be doing anything with the clarity. I'm going to leave that alone right now, because really, if I pull the clarity over, it makes it too clear because we had a mistiness, and I want to kind of keep that mistiness, okay? And notice I haven't touched vibrance or saturation or anything over here, okay? All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my tone curve. And I usually use my tone curve to fine adjust my pictures. And like I say, it just falls into the natural progression of the whole workflow. Start to the top from the top, work my way down. And so the next thing here is going to be the tone curve. And it's easier for me to make fine adjustments. You know, you can just really target the highlights here, pull them up so they're a little brighter. The overall dark lightness of the whole photograph can be affected here, as well as the darks. I'm going to pull that up a little bit. And the shadows. And the shadows, see, the shadows and the highlights are the two very ends of the curve, and so those are going to be the most stark adjustment. In other words, the darkest and darkest and the brightest. And the lights and the darks are going to be kind of in between. So, okay. All right. So just a few little tweaks of the tone curve, and we're looking pretty good. Okay. All right. Now, the HSL module is kind of cool because it allows you to adjust the hue, saturation, and the luminance. Okay. It also affects the color in the black and white. It's a cool place to do adjustments for black and white because you can go in, turn it black and white, and then affect the brightness and whatnot of the photograph according to where the color is. Okay. So you can zoom in on some of that stuff. What I'm going to do here is just stay over here in the color because I want to keep this one the way it is. And a lot of times I'll come over here into the luminance and I'll pull this up and you notice that it's kind of brightening up the edges of the greens a little bit, and I kind of like that. Kind of gives it the feel of the light coming through. The aqua, not a whole lot. The blue is going to have a little bit more effect. All right, so I've made the blue, where any place that's blue, I made it a little bit darker or brighter. I apologize. Okay, and again, if you wanted to zero in just on the saturation or something like that, you can do that there. All right. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it, pretty much leave it the way it is. All right. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to come down here into the detail. All right. Something else that I might think about doing is come down here into the effects, and they've added this dehaze slider. Because I got some haze up here, let's just see what it does. Really pulls that mountain in. So if I wanted to give myself a little bit more resolution in that mountain, I can kind of do it here, and it really brings those clouds in a little bit more in the sky. So I'm going to do that a little bit, and then I'm going to come back up here into the detail area. And I'm going to do a little bit of sharpening here. And anytime I do any of this kind of stuff, I always like to zoom in. That way I'm looking at the screen 100% so I can see what the heck I'm doing. All right. I get down here in this detail module, and I like to come through and take the color noise out. Now you usually don't bother the photograph a whole lot by pulling it all the way out. All right. And so same with this stuff down here. Once I just kind of leave that alone because you're going to removing all that. Then I'll come up here and I'll do a little bit of sharpening. It really brings the edges in, but it will also introduce some noise. If you look up here, I got some noise. So it's all a balancing act here. This is the amount of sharpening. This is the radius is how far past the edge it goes, basically. The detail will reintroduce more sharpening back into it, essentially, and the masking is where it meets light and dark. So, from what I understand, don't use these two very much. Typically, I can affect it with the amount of sharpening and the radius, and then come down into the noise reduction, and then do a little bit of damage control. And typically, it's your noise is going to show up in your planar areas. The noise will be absorbed in some of the trees and the texture and stuff like that in the photo, and stuff like that in the photograph. But the plain areas are where you're going to see your noise. Okay, I'm going to bring the detail down, and I'm going to bring my noise reduction up just a little bit. And you can see how it softened it up. So these areas up here that I want to make sure are nice and crisp, I want to make sure they're the noise reduction hasn't muddied them. If you see when I pull this noise reduction way up, it really just makes it look painterly and soft. It just takes away the detail. So I'm just going to bring just enough up so that it starts to affect the grain in this sky here, or the noise in the sky. All right, all right, that looks pretty good. As a matter of fact, I might want to do a little bit more sharpening up here. Pull the radius up a little bit. And it's all done by how it looks to you, okay? And I like to come back down here and look in these trees again and see what I got. Yeah, little pine cones in the tree and stuff. That's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm kind of done there. Zoom back out and go, oh my goodness, it looks pretty good, but I think I got a little bit more contrast in here than I really cared to do. So what I'm going to do is go in here, I'm going to touch my adjustment brush, come over here, activate the button, see where it's highlighted there. I'm going to come back in here and I think I'm going to take a little contrast out down here, maybe even, where's my blacks in here? There we go. Pull my blacks up a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, all right, done. Now, if you always want to check, you don't ever want to check your clipping. In other words, if you're too black or too bright, you can always do it down here in your blacks and your whites. If you hit the uh, wait a minute here. If you hit the Alt button or Command button on a Mac, you can move these back and forth until the blacks start clipping. You can see it show up there on the turns white. See how it's all really black. You can always come back here like that, just back just far enough so that you know that it's not clipped. In this particular case, it's still too dark for me. All right. It works a lot in, I use that a lot in black and white photos because I like to take the whole range in black and white where my color's not necessarily, because I want to be able to see in these shadows. Come on, computer. I want to be able to see in there. And if I was to take my blacks down too much, then it really starts to really get hard to see down inside of there. So it's just personal style, it's personal, you know. And so I've pulled up that whole bottom down there. So I'm going to come back. And if you remember right, I put a different one down here. This is that one little bitty one. I'm going to pull some back in that to kind of disguise that bush that's bugging the hell out of me. That unfocused bush. All right. Okay. So we've done some sharpening, some noise reduction, some lens correction. We've done some luminance adjustment in here in the HSL module. We've done some tone curves adjustment. We've done some basic adjustments here, and we've done a little bit with our tools up here. All right. So so yeah, that's about it, I guess. And then I would export this to my machine and save it and call it good. I'd come up here in my file, export, go to my export module, set what I want it to be set at. At the JPEG, if I want to limit the size, where to save it in the folder and all that, and then hit export, and then you're good to go. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helped. I hope it kind of demystified what I do. If I don't have to bring it into Photoshop, I don't. Um, Typically, the only time I bring it into Photoshop is to do some advanced processing techniques like Orton or something like that. Orton would not have helped this photograph. There's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. So adjust your photo, and this kind of shows you that you don't really need to rely on Photoshop. If you got a good histogram, you got a good photograph, and you've got a good file to begin with. Bring it into Lightroom, make a few tweaks to it, make it fabulous, and make it your own. So anyway, this kind of went a little bit longer than I expected to, and I hope it helps. And thank you. Thank you very much for everything you guys do for me. Take care. Bye.